Hello folks, welcome to the Tech channel. Today we just continue on JavaScript tutorial using FreeCodeCamp website. Let's just directly move to where we stopped in previous tutorial and navigate to the lesson where we stopped. We stopped last time here on this lesson 51 or the challenge 51. On this challenge, to explain what the function was returning. By default, the function will return undefined because we did not return anything on the call function that we created earlier. So in this example showing us this function, so if we want to return something instead of undefined, how we can return it. So in this example, this demo here, we can return this text. At the end, it's asking us to return hello instead of undefined inside this bad row function. Let's just do that here. And now, so if you see that, we see hello on the top here instead of undefined. And now if you check your code, congratulations, your code is passed. So submit the changes and let's move to the next lesson. And in this lesson, it will explain more about the functions and about the function parameters. As on the previous example, or how we added here hello, this is called hard-coded return string or return data. And that is not like fully the function reusable. And if you need to use your function properly and to be reusable, you need to pass through, for example, a parameter or parameters. So in this example, passing name as a param or parameter, and it's asking us at the end here to add name param to bad row as well. So let's just add that here, and we can learn more on for how to use parameter on the next lessons or challenge. Let's just add name here as a param and check your code. Boom, congratulations, this is very nice. Submit and go to next challenge. And in this challenge is asking us now to change, and instead of returning hard-coded text hello, instead we need to return the parameter. So the param, which we are going to pass it dynamically every time to be displaying a different value instead of hello, just hello. That is static. We need to remove that to be dynamically, instead passing the param, which is a name. Passing name here. Check your code. Boom, congratulations. Let's move on to the next. Submit the changes. And in this challenge is also explaining that now our function return undefined, so that also we're returning the name param or parameter, and that parameter, because we did not pass anything assigned to it. For example, when you pass the param to function, will by default will be undefined unless if you pass an argument when you call the function by itself. What that mean? In this example here, the demo example, this is a function we're passing a name parameter, and we return the name or the parameter. And then when we call the function called demo, then we pass an argument. So the argument, that's the value of the param we need to display. So when we pass this argument, then we'll display the name instead of undefined. For our case, we didn't pass anything instead of the name, so that's why it was displaying undefined here. Let's now here in this example, we can change to pass here when we call this bad row, we need to pass name to be displayed instead of undefined. And the name, it must be a string. So you know how to declare a string by using double quotes or single quotes, and then the string that we need to pass. So now we display name instead of undefined because we're passing a valid argument to this function. So now if we check your code, congratulations, your code is passed. Submit and move on to the next challenge. In this challenge is asking us to do a quick review on the functions and what we have learned already about function, how to use function and declaring a function. And in this example, so a function that to return hard-coded name. So instead of hard-coded name, is asking to display a dynamic name passing by two arguments or two parameters, first name and last name. And then every time when we call the function, we should have a different result that return at the end here. So it's asking us to create a function that to sum two parameters and give us the total of that two params. And the function is called sum. Let's just start declare a function. If you remember, so how we can declare a function, as we see here, we start using function keyword, then the function name, which is gonna be called sum, and then parentheses, and then curly bracket or object bracket as well. We can call it a curly bracket or object bracket, and inside here we'll add the first param and second param, or first parameter and second parameter. So the first one here, the sum should be the name of the variable, and we need to assign this function to a variable using, you can use either const or let, but because we are not going to reassign the variable, we can use const instead. So const, then the variable name called sum, and then assign it to a function, and the function name is going to be called two numbers. And then inside the function, without adding any parameter for now, just let's return at the end 5 plus 10, as is asking us to do here. And again, here is also asking us to pass the 5 and 10 as arguments, not writing them here hard coded. Instead, we can ask two parameters. So for example, num1, let's just call it num1, and then the second parameter you can call it num2. You can call it anything else. Actually, the parameter here is just something to be relevant for what you are doing. And then we are going to add num1 plus num2. As you see, also we use a camel case syntax. If you remember how to write a camel case, so this is the camel case. We can write that for a variable name or function name or even argument. So this is the syntax in JavaScript called camel case as num2, and then we can call this variable at the end here. We need to add a console log to call this function, and then pass two parameters. The first parameter 5 and the second parameter is 10, and now we should see 15. So sum of the 5 and 10 is 15. So now check your code. Sorry, there is something wrong. Let's see what is wrong. So the wrong is here the syntax. So as this supposed to be separated, so declare the function on the top here, and then after the function declare the variable, assign it to this here. When you call the function, you need to call the function using the function name, and then log out the sum variable. And let's check. Still this give us the same result, but the instruction here is asking us to use this approach instead of the previous one. Check your code. Congratulations, your code is passed. Let's do a quick review here. What we have done, we created a function, the function called add two numbers using camel case syntax, and this function has two params or two parameters. First one called num1 and second one called num2, and inside this function we return num1 plus num2, which will give us the total whatever num1 and num2 is, but they must to be a number or valid number. And at the next line we declare a variable called sum. We use const because we are not going to reassign this variable to something else. That's why I use const instead of let, and this is assigned to this function. We call the function and then passing two arguments. The first argument is 5 and second argument is 10, and as we mentioned, argument will be the value that we pass to be used inside this function as a parameter. And at the end here we just print out this variable value, which is 15 here. Now submit and move on to the next challenge 56. And in this challenge is just basically asking us, after the quick review for the function, we can remove this function and the console. And check your code. Congratulations, your code is passed, and submit the changes. And move on to the next lesson or next challenge 57. And in this lesson is explaining about the variable scope. In JavaScript there is more than one variable scope. There is a global scope and local scope, but in this example here is explaining the global scope, or the variable location that should be accessible on the other functions or inside a block of code, for example function or loops and so on. So in this example here is declaring a variable called title, and then this title you can access it inside this function because it's declared on top or outside of the function, and that's why in this case it's called global scope, so we can access it inside the function. But if this variable was declared inside the function but we're trying to access it outside the function, then we'll not be able. So in that case, it will be a local scope. We are going to learn more about this in the next tutorial. But for now, let's just understand how to declare a variable in global scope and how we can use it. For our case, is asking us to update bad row function to concatenating this name with the character, and so similar to this title plus name. So we can do that here. Basically use this character variable plus name, and basically character variable is coming from the top here. And now let's just check your code. Congratulations, your code is run successfully. Submit the changes and move on to the next challenge. And in this challenge, basically explains same what I have said on the previous challenge. So there is a two different type of this scope, variable scope, global one and local scope. So here is explaining the local scope. For example, if you declare a variable inside the function, you will not be able to access it outside. So it's asking us to declare a variable using const keyword, and then the variable called test, the name of the variable, assign it to value testing, and then is asking us to console log out this test outside the function, and that's supposed to throw an error. So now if you see here, the error test is not defined because the test is defined inside the function, and we are trying to access the outside the function. So this is a local scope. Anything between this object bracket or curly bracket, you will not be able to access it outside of them. So if check your code and that says sorry, try again, your function should declare test variable. And the end, after we confirm that we see the error, is asking us to remove just the console log so we can proceed and move on to the next challenge. Check your code. Congratulations. Move on to the next challenge. In this challenge, basically is explaining, for example, if you want to access this local scope variable outside of this function, you can return this variable from inside the function and then call the function or assign the function to a variable, then you can access it outside of it. What is that meaning? For example, here declaring this getName function and declaring a variable inside getName, the name, and then returning the name. You will not be able to access the actual name itself outside, but you can call the function by itself will return that name for you. Still you can access the same value. So either you can access it using two different ways, by calling the function directly or by assigning the function call to a new variable. For this case, is asking us to return test variable instead of character plus name. Let's just do that. Returning test, and check your code. Boom, congratulations, your code is passed. Submit the changes and move on to the next challenge. In this challenge, it will ask you to declare a console log to display this work after return here, for example, .log, and then add that here. So it will not display anything here on the right side, as same as if you see that is grayed out, which means this is not being called and is not executable. So anything after return will not be executable. So the function will just quit from the line where is returned. Anything after that will not be called and will not be accessible. If we remove the same console log just before return, now we see that displayed on the this print area. So that means you can access and call anything before return, but anything after return will not be executable. Now let's check your code and submit the changes. Sorry, there is something wrong. Let's see what that we're supposed to have two console logs instead of one. So let's just copy two console logs, one before and one return, and both of them has same text. Let's now check your code. Congratulations, your code is passed. Submit the changes and move on to next challenge 61, which is going to be on next tutorial. Thank you for watching and see you on very next tutorial.